Hey guys, Wolf Typhlosion here, back with another video, and I'm sorry for not uploading recently. I've had some things to do, and I was planning on doing a double upload on Christmas, but couldn't find the time to do it. So, this is Wolf Deku had a draconic portal quirk part 4. Now, I left y'all off, uh, right before the sports festival, as everyone's in the waiting room getting ready to go out and do the festival. As Azawa gives them a quick little speech and then leaves to go up to his watching stand. As they then get called out to the arena and they go through the tunnel and have their little flashy entrance, just like in canon. Now, as they go up there, Izuku gets called up to give his speech, but since he was more focused on training with his quirk and trying to figure out how he can lure a dragon through his portals, didn't really have one prepared. So he goes up there and give a quick whatever he can think off the top of his head, trying to encourage people to do their best in the sports festival. Now, he then goes back down to where he was sitting, and Midnight grabs the wheel and spins it, and it lands on obstacle course. Now, everyone's excited as Izuku is already trying to plan out how he can skip around some of the obstacles they might have. As as they all get ushered into the tunnel that they start in, just like in canon. As when they start counting down from 3, Izuku makes a portal, and the dragon that comes out isn't necessarily the one he wanted to come out. It's the air dragon. As Todoroki did his same move of freezing everyone to the floor, with the exception of 1A jumping out of the way. Izuku also jumping up into the air, expecting to grab onto Sapphire's claw, but instead he feels his shirt gets picked up. He looks back and sees that it's the air dragon that has him in his mouth and is flying at top speed forward. And as the air dragon is flying top speed, his tail, quote unquote, accidentally trips Todoroki. And he keeps on flying. Now, he's dodging the robots at top speeds that is making Izuku a bit queasy, but not enough to where he wants to throw up or where he's dizzy. So, they manage to get past the robots as everyone else is doing what they did in canon. As they quickly come up to the pitfall trap. And the air dragon, not wanting to weave and dodge through all the poles, decides to just go up and over them. But stay close enough to where, if need be, he can drop Izuku on one of the poles and take a little rest. As they go over the poles, pitfall, and are still in first place, with Bakugo furiously letting off explosions trying to catch up to them, and Todoroki sprinting as fast as he can, sometimes making an ice path in front of him so he can go even faster. As they don't want to be outdone by a kid with a summoning quirk. but they have no control over the fact that Izuku had summoned one of the quickest dragons in that world. As they then quickly approach the minefield, Izuku, seeing bumps in the sand, decides to tuck his legs up towards them just so he doesn't accidentally set one off. And they fly past the minefield as the wind pressure behind the air dragon actually kicks a few of the mines up out of the sand and explodes the other mines, creating a bit of a pathway, but not really. As they then make it through the finish line at record speed. As when they do, the air dragon drops Izuku down to the ground and flies around him happily, saying that was fun and that they should do it again. Izuku, having a bit of trouble standing because of how fast they were going, then says, "You what those dragon I was trying to summon, first off. Second off, how did you come through when I tried to specifically summon Sapphire?" As Izuku is forgetting the time in the USJ when he tried to summon Sapphire, but instead got Luna, which is the Light Dragon Queen. As the air dragon says, but a portal appeared in front of me and I went through it. Saying that you are in a race type thing, I decided to do this. Being cheeky as he says it. Izuku just putting his hand and rubbing the bridge of his nose, decides to let it go. As Bakugo comes in second with Sho Todoroki coming in a close third, as everyone else also gets their original places. Now they go through and they begin the cavalry battle. As Deku, thinking that he should summon Sapphire for this one so they can have a height advantage against everyone else, and so that most people won't be able to easily get to them. Summons the portal again, but this time Sapphire comes through. As Izuku is happy that she came through instead of the air dragon this time. And his team, I'm gonna say, is Tsu and Tokuyami. As Tokuyami is the one who has the headbands, and Tsu being in front of Tokuyami on the back of Sapphire, with Sapphire holding Izuku in her claws. As so as that's going on, and when they say start, Bakugo, wanting to be the first place winner in this one, decides to jump off of his teammates' shoulders and start boosting his way up to them. But as he does so, Sapphire does a quick tail whip and knocks him down, essentially putting him in his place of he does not own the air, she does. So the cavalry battle goes along with a few other teams trying to get at Izuku's team's 10 million it was either 10 million or 10,000 points. I believe it was 10,000. 10,000 points, but all eventually failing. The closest ones who could have gotten it being Bakugo and Todoroki's teams. Now, so that happens as Izuku's team comes out on on first. As the next event is the one-on-one battles. Now, the one-on-one battles happening. Uh, and this is where I've kind of had trouble figuring out what to do for the lineup, but I figured it out with the lineup being mostly the same, except Sue takes the place of Uraka, and Hatsume still being in the one-on-one battles since she was in a separate teams, in a different team that made it through. So, yeah. Now, as all that happens, and they announce the lineup, Izuku is looking at who he's facing against, which it being Shinso, and he tries to figure out the best plan of action, as he decides he will use Sapphire for the one-on-one battle since he knows her abilities the best. And the other ones aren't necessarily fit for this kind of fight. Except for the Light Dragon Queen, but she's just too big. So yeah. They then go and take a lunch break as Shoto doesn't pull Izuku away, saying that he's All Might's secret love child and all that. So, as the one-on-one battles begin, Shinso then starts to make small talks with Izuku, which he gets replies from Izuku, as he's able to then take hold of him, thanks to his quirk being mind control. But Sapphire realizing that Izuku doesn't have control over his body, and with Shinso saying, walk out of the arena, she then grabs Izuku with one of her claws and shakes him a little, breaking his mind-controlled state, as Shinso looks at Sapphire being visibly angered by this, as as Sapphire then just flies at him, grabbing him up and basically chucking him out of the arena. As Shinso then goes on saying that he, just because he has a powerful quirk, so on and so forth, with him just ranting about how Izuku's better, think he's better than all of them just because he has a powerful quirk. When Izuku then walks up to Shinso and says, I was abandoned at the age of 4 because of my quirk. So you have no idea what you're talking about. As he then leaves the arena, with Shinso being visibly shocked by this. As all the other fights go on as normal, with the exception of Sue and Bakugo fighting. Now, Bakugo giving Sue his all and Sue giving it her all, Sue manages to get Bakugo near the edge multiple times, but ultimately Bakugo ends up winning. As we now come up to Shoto and Izuku's battle. As um, as Shoto knows he has to be wary of Sapphire, but also be wary of Izuku because he's basically trained with dragons his entire life. As when they walk up and the fight begins, Shoto does his initial um, big ice wave trying to trap both of them. Uh, Sapphire, seeing his intention, grabs Izuku and flies up into the air, dodging the entire thing. As she then puts Izuku onto her back and has Sapphire's come up out of the ground and start circling around her. Shoto, seeing this, begins to be on guard as Sapphire then starts having the Sapphires shoot at Shoto as he keeps putting up ice walls to defend himself and keep them away from him. This being said, he's also doing a little sneak move of trying to ground Sapphire with his ice, trying to encase either her wings or putting a big enough ice block around her legs that she'd have to stay on the ground. And it works in one way or another, as Sapphire's wings then get covered in ice and she slowly falls to the ground. With Izuku still being on her back, he jumps off and manages to land on the ground safely. As he then begins to dodge and weave, trying to get close to Shoto, who just keeps throwing ice towards Izuku. Now, with Sapphire, she has her Sapphires around her, breaking away the ice, so she can fly again, being a bit angered that he managed to ground her with his ice. And as all this is happening, Izuku has Shoto's full attention on him. Now, when she manages to break free, she then decides to go for a sneak attack, managing to slip past Shoto's eyesight, and since his attention is on Izuku, goes in from his left side. Shoto, seeing Sapphire appear out of nowhere on his left side, decides to flare his fire side up, trying to get her to back away, which works, and she manages to burn her claw. Manages to get a burn mark on her claw thanks to how hot Shoto made his fire at that point in time. This making Sapphire a bit angry that her claw has been burned. Then decides to have her Sapphires wrap around Shoto and encase him in a cage of sapphires. She then just tail whips him out of the arena, still visibly angered. As she tells Izuku to make a portal back to her world so she can go get that healed up. He says okay and makes a portal, and she goes through it. As when she does, all the sapphires just drop around Todoroki, and he looks around visibly afraid a little bit because he was not expecting that. So we move on to the last fight, as Bakugo's fight went as canon, I believe. Yeah. So, we move on to the last fight, which is Bakugo versus Deku. Now, Bakugo, knowing Deku's fight style by now because he's been studying him, sees that that Deku has a plan behind what he's about to do. As when the fight starts, Bakugo then fires off explosions one after another, not giving Deku time to respond. But what he doesn't know is that Deku had managed to make a portal behind Bakugo, and what comes out is not Sapphire. It's the Air Dragon. The Air Dragon, seeing Bakugo right in front of him, decides to ram him at full speed from behind. So he rams into Bakugo's back, basically pushing him as far forward as he can, which also shocks Bakugo because the recoil of his explosions and his locked up arms are not to be messed with, but since he was firing off an explosion at that point and he had the Air Dragon ram him in the back, his explosion pushed him even further back as he hits the concrete at full force, as he is then knocked out. Because of that, how powerful his explosion hits him down to the ground. As Izuku is just standing there stunned of how easy it was to win that fight. As Midnight calls it, being Izuku the winner of the entire sports festival, as they all go off and wait for Bakugo to wake up. When he wakes up, they then do the award ceremonies, as Bakugo is still a bit furious of how Izuku won and the fact that Izuku used his own explosions against him. As the next day in class, they see on Aizawa's desk a stack of papers. As when Aizawa walks in, he then tells them about the work studies, saying that they will be tailing someone for a week, and that the sports festival was to give those heroes an opportunity to see what they could help you improve with, or so on and so forth. Izuku, already having chosen Aizawa, since he already knew this, decides to look at what work studies, what other people gave him an offer, as there are quite a few, one being Endeavor himself, the other being All Might. But he decides to turn both of them down and stick with his original choice of Aizawa. So, okay. Yeah. So, they go on a few missions, a few patrols. 1 day, 2 days, they also go through Izuku's portal and into the other world to explore and sightsee a little bit, bringing Mike along this time since he was furious they left without him the first time. As the last 2 days of the work study, Izuku and Aizawa are heading to Hosu City on a train. Now, as they're heading towards Hosu City for a patrol, the train then gets attacked by a Nomu. Now, Aizawa and another hero barging in and taking the Nomu down. Aizawa already having Izuku help him evacuate some civilians. Then tells Izuku that he has permission to use his quirk to summon his dragons. Izuku nodding at the permission he's been granted, opens up 3 different portals. One dragon that comes out is Sapphire. The other is the Air Dragon, and the last one will be Luna. As Izuku then tells all 3 of them to help the heroes defeat the Nomu. They all say okay and fly off into different directions. When they see a Nomu, they deal with it accordingly. As Luna, having experience fighting a Nomu already, decides to tell the other 2 their weakness being their brain, or the brain-looking thing on the head. As Izuku and Aizawa are running around trying to help civilians and other heroes, they see the hero Ida was interning with, but no Ida. As Izuku then starts to have a bad feeling about this. As when Aizawa asks him where Ida is, he tells Aizawa that he doesn't know. That when all this happened, Ida disappeared. As Aizawa then looks at Deku and tells him to go look for Ida, and when he finds them, to text Aizawa where they are, so he can come help, and that he still has permission to use his quirk. Izuku, nodding at this, decides to open up one last portal, and out comes the 1-foot dragon. As he then tells the dragon to help him find Ida so they can cover more ground. Izuku, being smart about this, decides to call Sapphire back and hops onto her back, and they go fly around searching for Ida. Now, they look around as the 1-foot dragon then finds Ida with Stain about to run him through with his chipped katana. But the 1-foot dragon lets off a little fire blast, which once explodes is almost like a firework. So you'll definitely see it in the middle of the night. As he then runs at Stain and circles around him, annoying the fire out of Stain and getting him away from Ida and the other hero that is there but also paralyzed. I always forget that hero's name because he was insignificant. As Sapphire then sees the little firework that went off, and then turns and flies off that direction. Izuku asking Sapphire why she's flying this direction, as she says that that's where Ida is, and the one-foot dragon found him. Izuku nodding as they fly over that as fast as she could, as Sapphire could. They soon get there and see that Ida is on the ground paralyzed, yelling at Izuku's one-foot dragon to go away and leave Stain to him. That's his fight. And the other hero also being paralyzed and unable to move with a few wounds here and there. Sapphire then decides to dive bomb towards the Stain Killer, as Izuku hops off before she lands onto Stain Killer and pins him down to the ground. As Izuku walks up to Ida and essentially kicks him in on the sides, telling him that he's incredibly stupid for trying to fight the hero killer alone. Ida going back at him, saying that he paralyzed my brother and I need to get revenge for my brother. Izuku then retorts, saying at least he's alive and not dead. Ida freezing up about this, as Izuku then says, be glad that your brother is alive and only paralyzed. Most people would rather have that than having their loved one be killed. Ida, not knowing what to say afterwards, just stays quiet now. As Izuku turns around and sees Sapphire pinning Stain down, as he's trying to cut Sapphire's wrist, but having no effect with how strong their scales are. He can't cut through them. As Sapphire then binds Stain up with sapphire crystals, and yeah. As Izuku then finds a piece of rope and decides to tie Stain up a bit more just to be sure, as he then sends a text towards Aizawa, telling him exactly where they are. As Aizawa soon gets there with a few other heroes and a few police officers as well. And he asks what the situation was, as he sees Ida and the other hero on the back of Sapphire, and Stain being bound up by Sapphires and rope, saying, never mind, I see it now. As they then take Stain away, as when the flying Nomu tries to go down and grab Izuku, the one-foot dragon prevents it by pushing Izuku out of the way and firing a little fireball at the flying Nomu, shooting its wing and making it fall down. As later that night, Izuku and Ida are in the hospital, as Aizawa, the dog police chief, and who Ida was interning with, all walk in the same room. As the police chief goes on about how Ido was being reckless and that he shouldn't have done all that. As when he was about to go off on Deku for using his quirk, Aizawa stops him there, saying that he gave Izuku permission to use his quirk. As the police chief then backs off, saying, okay, since you gave him permission to use his quirk, I'll let this one slide. As he then says, the credit for taking the hero killer out will most likely go towards Izuku. If he doesn't want the fame, we can always have someone else take the credit. Izuku, not wanting to let this credit go, says he'll take it. As that's where I'll be leaving it off, guys. Hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, comment down in the comment section what I could do to make these worth even better, or if y'all have any other ideas that you might want me to do in the future, as well as liking the video and subscribing. I'll really appreciate it, and I'll see y'all in the next one.